Hello, welcome to another episode of Deck Musings, in which we use a deck that predominantly featured in tournament play. There's been a few exceptions to that in the series, but we use it as an excuse to explore various card types in Magic's history and just go down all manner of rabbit holes, starting with the deck as our jump off point. So we're up to this period in Magic. We had touched on it before when I did feature a Pros Bloom deck, and I did look at one from 1998. So we've sort of come back here now, because I did go back for a little while. And in today's episode we're going to be looking at this, so a white Weenie Empyrial Armor deck. So where does it come from? Well, 1998 World Championship. So Brian Selden actually won this with a deck featuring Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare, amongst other things. But as you can see, that is not a white Weenie deck, so that's not the deck that we're going to be looking at. I'll include links to this article on Wikipedia, so you can actually see the finishing order, various other things. Interesting tournament. So obviously we're concerned with the standard portion, but it also had a, what would this be? This would be a block booster draft, so Tempest, Stronghold, Exodus, and also Tempest block constructed as well in there. Standard and constructed. So if we were to look at standard at the time, just to give you a better idea of what we might be looking at. So in standard we've got 5th edition, Mirage Visions, Weatherlight, Tempest, Stronghold, and Exodus has come in as of July the 1st, 1998. And that's what standard looked like until October 31st, 1998. And then we're into this period, which we'll be covering next week, a deck from this period, which is the Combo Winter era. And there were a number of, 4 World Championship decks that were produced for 1998. We've got the winning deck, which here they're calling Kali Nightmare. You can see here it mentions it revolves around Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare. There's also a lobotomy in here. I was tempted by this, but then I noticed there's going to be a lot of cards or similar cards that we've already spoken about in the episodes. There's a deck from the other finalists, which was Ben Rubin's red Weenie deck. So an aggressive sly deck. Looks pretty interesting, but we have had a look at mono red Weenie decks before. And so I settled with this one. So in this 1998 World Championship deck release, they did feature this white Weenie deck, so the Brian Hacker deck, 20 aggressive creatures. It's got some interesting cards in it that are specific to the block and the most recent set, so I thought this is probably the one to go with. There's a few cards here we have featured already, so I'll probably just skip over them a little bit or go through them a little faster. And then the final deck, which is featured in the 1998 Championship decks, was a 12th place deck. This was Randy Buehler's Draw Go. And this is an interesting, pure control deck. And you can see here we've got like mainly counter spells and a single creature, this Rainbow Efreet, which has phasing that the player can control. Yeah, the deck's offense is limited to Stalking Stones and a Rainbow Efreet. And we actually saw Stalking Stones, or a copy of it, when I did the Friday artwork flip through. I think it was, yeah, it was the Stalking Stones one. So that's where we're going today, and here is the deck laid out in Architect. So let's have a look. I've also got the set specific cards here, so you can see if you recognise the set symbols. We've got Stronghold, Exodus, there's a Tempest card here, more Tempest. There's a White Knight here from, this would be 5th edition. More, so quite a bit of Exodus stuff actually. Something here from Weatherlight. Visions, and that will be Mirage. And then 17 lands and a single sorcery, which is Cataclysm from Exodus. So yeah, a lot of Exodus stuff is, which is one of the other reasons I featured this deck, because there was so much stuff in it from the most recent set. Okay, so you can probably spot here we've got a number of evasive creatures, things that are difficult to deal with for various reasons. So we've got 3 Nomads en-Kor, so single white's a 1/1, 0, redirect 1 damage from Nomads en-Kor to a creature you control. Got Soul Warden, single white's a 1/1, whenever any other creature comes into play you gain 1 life. And then we have these Soltari creatures, so we've got 4 Soltari Monks. I say Soltari, but here they're referred to as clerics. You can see they're all clerics, but they all have Soltari in the name. So the first one, the monk, has protection from black and shadow. So with shadow, this creature can block or be blocked by only creatures with shadow. Soltari Priest, double white, so 2/1, has protection from red and shadow. Warrior en-Kor, so very, you can see here, similar to the other en-Kor. This is a soldier, this is a knight. It's double white, it's a 2/2, 0, redirect 1 damage from Warrior en-Kor to a creature you control. White Knight, double white, first strike, protection from black. Paladin en-Vec, 1 and 2 white, first strike, protection from black, protection from red. And Soltari Visionary, 2 and 2 white for a 2/2, another shadow creature, and if it damages any player, destroy target enchantment that player controls. You can see we've got various 2/2s, 2/1s, 1/1s, but a large package of creatures, 27 in total. You've got 5 enchantments, 1 Aura of Silence, 1 and 2 white. Artifact and enchantment spells cost target opponent an additional 2 to play. Sacrifice Aura of Silence, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then Empyrial Armor. So 1 and 2 white, enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Well, sorry, +1/+1. +X/X, where X is equal to the number of cards in your hand. 2 instants, comprising two different instants, so 4 Tithes and 3 Disenchant, so 7 instances in total. With Tithes, search your library for a Plains card. If you control fewer lands than target opponent, you may search your library for an additional Plains card, reveal those cards to all players and put them into your hand. Shuffle your library afterwards. And the Disenchant, we're mainboarding here, artifact or enchantment destruction. And 17 planes, and then 4 copies of this sorcery. Cataclysm, 2 and 2 white. Each player chooses from the permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land, and sacrifices the rest. So we got Selective Wrath, I suppose. And so this is going to be interesting, particularly looking at these shadow creatures. I thought it would be fun to look at the different lands that were kicking around at that point in Magic. So these are all from sets that were in Standard. Obviously there's nothing to say you have to play basic land from, you know, the Standard set. When you play Standard, you can play it from other sets outside of Standard if you want. That's true of any version of a card. As long as it's legal in the format that you're playing in, you can play any version of it. But I thought it was interesting, compare and contrast. So this is the stuff from 5th edition, so I'm going through roughly in order in which they were released. You can see here, these would be, you know, the planes we could potentially play. Islands, swamps, mountains and forests. And yeah, I quite like the 5th edition artwork. Pulls in from lots of different places, and you can probably see several of these, I think, except for the swamps, have one sort of copy of a slightly icier piece of artwork. Then we've got the stuff from Mirage. And we've seen this before. So those will be our planes from Mirage. And then we have the stuff from Tempest. So very dark planes here. In fact, the artwork generally is pretty, you know, dark. Islands, swamps, mountains, forest. Dark skies in a lot of these as well, where they do feature skies. Okay, let's dive into the actual other cards in the deck. So Nomads on en-Kor, and you'll see there's a lot. Obviously, yeah, there's going to be a reference to World Championship decks from 1998 in these cards we look at. Pretty interesting to see how many of these have been reprinted outside of that. And Tempest Remastered was a Magic the Gathering Online only set. Okay. Damage Redirection. Damage Prevention Self. Let's look at that. So a number of cards that have that on them. So these are cards that specifically restrict or prevent damage to themselves. You can see with the ones there, if we go back, let me just flick back to this actually. Let's just want to, yeah. So 0 redirect 1 damage from Nomads en-Kor to a creature you control. Well, you can see you don't have to tap this, and so you can spread out multiple damage actually. Thinking about that. So let's sort of spread it out to lots of different creatures. And it can redirect damage to itself. It's possible to redirect more damage to a creature than that creature's toughness, which is interesting. You can use this ability as much as you want prior to damage being dealt, and when you direct combat damage, it is still combat damage. Interesting. Okay, so I mean the concept of redirecting combat damage, as you'll see, has been around for a while. I don't know if there was ever a sort of hole in Magic's history where it didn't feature so much. As we scroll through, it looks like you get it, I suppose, where are we? Scourge into Saviours. Well, there's a bit of a gap there, yeah. It looks like there's gaps here and there. Now the one that's the one that's always interested me, let me try and find it. It would have come up with the original artwork, I think. I think I've gone too far here because originally it was older borders. There it is. Mana Revolutionary. 2 and 2 white. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to Mana Revolutionary. So 2/2. Now, the reason why I bring this up is I was first aware of this in 10th edition, and there's some sort of interesting redirection tricks you can do in decks where you can redirect damage to Mano, and then it's, you know, all damage is prevented. So you can sort of see how in white, and there's other ways you can do this as well in other colours, but there's sort of interesting combinations of cards which redirect damage from something you control or from yourself onto another card which can absorb the damage. Now, just to place it, so you've got this block, which is Tempest block. Then you have the block after that, which would be Urza block, and then you have Macadian Masks. So you wouldn't have had a situation in Standard where this and this were in Standard together. By the time this rotated in, this would have gone out, I think. Yeah, pretty sure about that. Was Uncle around 4th edition. Okay. First strike, protection from black, protection from red. Getting these, yeah, it's interesting here. We got, this is a 10th edition card. So we've looked at French vanilla before. You can see here this is protection from black and red. It is a form of evasion, and of course evasion comes in multiple different guises. So what can we look at here that would be fun? So I think if we look at, yeah, let's do that. So going to the tags again. Stuff in evasion. So evasion stuff in white for the moment. I'm assuming, well actually there's some enchantments here, so we better take that out, so let's just do that. Type creature and 3-drop. Let's narrow this down a bit. And also, I suppose as we're doing a white weenie deck, let's try and keep things within the theme of like sort of white creatures, just so it's on theme. It's interesting design space to explore. I mean, it's cool because it's actually quite cool to look at the different weenie decks, the mono weenie decks in all of the 5 colours actually. That's another interesting, well, rather large rabbit hole you could go down. So we got evasion, we got 3. Well, let's just have a look at the curve here. I'm just gonna maybe, oops, that's funny. Okay, I forgot to do that. That was a question I copied in for a completely different video. That's amusing. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. I forgot that bit. That's better. So yeah, 3 drops with evasion. What do you get for your money? I got 81 cards here, so quite a few. You can see, yeah, I mean, look, we got Tempest, Stronghold, Exodus, and we move into the portal decks. There's one here from Urza's Saga. Acadian Masks. This is Apocalypse, Odyssey, Onslaught, Legions, then moving into, this is what, original mirrored in block, isn't it? Nice artwork here actually. Yeah, some nice artwork in original mirrored in block. Got champions into Ravnica, so Ravnica block stuff here. This will be, in fact, what I'll do. That's the casting cost. What about if we do that? Yeah, 76, slightly less then. Okay, taking that out. Interesting here, so we're into, from Disenchant we're going into Time Spiral block. There's Plane of Chaos, and then Future Sight. So you've got things like Stonecloaker and Aven Mind Sensor. This is a pretty cool card. Yeah, you got 2/1. Flash, flying. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of their library instead. I've seen this on a number of, like, auto-include lists for EDH decks that play white. As also Stonecloaker. Yeah, nice 2/2 for 3 there with flying and changeling. So if you're looking for, material, so it's filler for a tribal deck in an underrepresented creature type for your particular deck. These are always interesting cards to keep an eye out for. Oh, there's Flicker Wisp. Yeah, it's interesting though, like 3 drops with evasion. What have we got here? 2 and a white, 2/2 with flying. Whenever Phyrexian Pegasus attacks, another target attacking creature without flying gains flying until end of turn. Okay. Moving on, Soltari Monk. So another evasion creature. And this gives us an opportunity, I think, to look at 2-drop evasion creatures in white. So let's do that. So white, we'll do type of creature again. And we want the ID to be 1, don't we, for that? Evasion, and of course we need to say the CMC is 2 this time round because it's a 2-drop. Okay. There we go. So yeah, lots of stuff from early Magic's history. And you know, again, evasion isn't just, that category isn't just flying, so you can get cards where there's protection from a certain colour, cards which have other ways of like, sneaking around the attack conditionally, and then of course flying. And there might be other terms you come across like pseudo-evasion. So I think in that category you get cards where some of the damage spills over. So not all of it gets through, but some of it gets through. I suppose Trample is an example of that in green. I must admit, this is probably one of my favourite things to do, is to sit at a certain point on the curve with a certain card type and a particular keyword ability or type of ability, and just have that slice through and look through historically. You see lots of things. It's interesting, isn't it? Here you get, we've seen a few Griffins and Pegasuses and en-Kors as well, like in that 2-drop white evasion point. And then stuff like this, these 2-drop level up creatures. So the evasion was, well, it didn't kick in until you had a level counter on it. At least one. Get up to 4 and you've got vigilance as well. The Bliss of the Urn. Wow. What's on this one? 1 and a white, 1/2, flash flying, 5, creature you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Flying and lifelink. Lifelink's always fun to play around with, I find. Got a few here that additionally do pump as well. Yeah, under various conditions. And of course you've got things like Intimidate as well. Okay. So now moving on to Shadow. So another form of evasion, but very specific here. So this creature can block or be blocked by only creatures with Shadow. And it's a two-way thing, so you know, it works to your advantage but also your disadvantage, because it means you can't block any creature. Yeah, so if a creature doesn't have Shadow on it, then the damage you'll get through, you can't, you know, well, not damage, sorry, you can't use this creature to block a creature unless that creature has Shadow. Yeah. So mirrors Soltari Monk in as much as this one does red, Soltari Monk does black. So what I was going to look at is, this is a good opportunity to look at creatures in Magic which have Shadow on them. So let's do that. See when Shadow's been a thing, see what, you know, what sort of creatures it turns up on. So we have 104 cards with Shadow on them. Oops. Oh, that's because it says, yeah, so I'm going to have a problem here with some of these. Is anything with Shadow on it? It's a shame there's not a tag in for Shadow, actually. But if you look here, you can see Tempest, all through here. We've got in blue. We've got black as well, and so red, where it's featuring, is ways of dealing with Shadow, both in red and green. So looking at this, white, blue and black had Shadow, and then red and green dealt with Shadow. And then we've got this white-red creature here. But yeah, just look at all these Tempest cards. And then Stronghold into Exodus. You can see again, you know, same colours. Right, yeah, a lot of these, it's just because it's got Shadow in the name, it's picking it up. My guess is, yeah, this is where I thought it might crop up again. So in the Time Spiral block. And everywhere else it's just because it's referencing shadow in the name, I think. Yeah, I don't think we've had a return. There might be the odd aggregate set where it cropped up, but that would be a reprint, so you wouldn't see it here. Okay, moving on. Whether that's got a special tag. Removal, enchantment, destroy. So, is that what saboteur means? Effects that trigger when you do... Oh, okay, here we go. This is exactly what I wanted to see. So, yeah, cool. So there is a tag for that. So when did that start? Oh, now it's ASP. There's our card. Soltari Gorillas again. Clearly, it's a thing. Wow. So we're up to the more modern stuff here. Mirrodin. Also got equipment here, you can see that's doing it. Swords. Yeah, 2 swords here. This is cool. Oh, you got the unspeakable, yeah. A number of legendary creatures here. There was the ninja type things as well that had it. You can see lots of cards from Kamigawa. Ton of stuff. Also interesting to see sometimes when we look at these abilities over time, particularly with sets where there's a guild in it, it's interesting to note whether any of them ended up as like a guild type ability or ability in a guild. Oh, that's rather relevant to our current trip through 4-colour commander decks. The original, and at the time only 4-colour creatures in, or 4-colour cards in Magic. The Nephilims, there's a couple there. This also looks like it includes stuff where you get a benefit as well. It's also nice when we're going through these, you'll notice that it's easier to spot this particular set, the Player Chaos set. I've mentioned this before, where, you know, when they're laid out like this, it's a little bit easier to spot the difference with the borders here. You can see the darker shades here when you compare it against the normal frame. I'd never noticed that before either, with the cycle of dragons from Plane of Chaos, if you look. Yeah, I never really thought about it. I mean, I know they're a cycle, but yeah, they all have these combat triggers on them. But it's interesting. It's conditional, isn't it? Yeah. There's some classic stuff here. Oh dear. Oh, look at that. Does anybody else get a smile on their face when they see Zendikar block? I know it changed a little bit, didn't it? So you got the first two sets, so Zendikar into World Wake, and then effectively you had a sort of reboot, didn't you, when you get to Rise of the Eldrazi? But oh yeah, seeing those cards just brings such a smile to my face. And the reason behind that is, you know, I've mentioned on numerous occasions the first Magic the Gathering cards I bought were 10th edition, but I then didn't buy any, and it wasn't until I came to Canada I started, you know, collecting again, I suppose. And it was basically around this period. So World Wake had just come out, and we were getting ready for Rise of the Eldrazi. And yeah, I was watching so much like Magic the Gathering coverage on YouTube at that time. Wow. Of course, yeah, and the swords always did something interesting, didn't they? Some of them, from damage and stuff like Whispering Spectre. This came up when I did the No Hand, No Land episode, and people were sort of checking in on the series with the variants that they had tried and other things. And I don't know if the person still watches my channel, but they mentioned a cool deck they've been playing around with on, I think it's MTGO maybe, and I'm sure it featured Whispering Spectre in it. So they'd gone like down an infect route as well. It's pretty cool. Oh, another sword. Yeah, this is Saboteur was what it was called, wasn't it? It was the tag. Interesting effect. It just goes on and on. Wow, yeah, 696 Saboteur cards. I better stop at some point. I'm only halfway through, so that's the homework, I think. So, I'll tell you what then, let's just look. Look at this. So if we go all the Saboteur legendaries, look how many there are you can have fun with. So let me know if anybody watching the channel really loves playing Saboteur style Magic the Gathering decks. Let me know in the comments section. Oh, it's sending shivers down my spine. Oh, GT. They got equipment as well. Right, moving on. Oh, Soul Warden. Wow. Yeah. So what's this Death Greeter then? Okay, that's the black version. Oh. Yeah, black-white life gain. Great thing to mess around with. If you want to have fun with like a 2-colour thing, like a 2-colour Weenie life gain, is great fun to mess about with, like white black. So we'll have a look at Soul Warden ability here. I'm curious about colour shifted Essence Warden. So yeah, so we've got, what was it? We could go like white, black, green life gain. Would be funny. And then yeah, Soul's Attendant similar too. So what do we see Soul Warden ability on? Creatures entering the battlefield cause you to gain end life. Now obviously these sort of decks come with advices. You know, if you're not careful, you just end up building a don't die deck, because it is often referred to. But obviously you want to do something useful with the life gain. And the other way is interesting to do things with it is to, often you get, like if you've got like a hyper aggressive Weenie deck, often that aggressiveness comes at the expense of your own life in some capacity. And some of this sort of life gain ability is a great way of counteracting that. Because yeah, you get into the realms of like super fast Weenie decks, you often find that your own life might get depleted pretty quickly. So sometimes like having some form of life gain in there as well is really helpful. But even better if you can do something interesting with that life gain on top of it. And you can see why, you know, a combination of white black's really cool, because there are a number of black cards where you can leverage life as a resource. And if you have lifelink and other forms of life gain as well, where you can restock that resource, that's really cool. So I think you get the impression here that mainly, you know, the Soul Warden ability, you mainly see it in white, but we've got some white black stuff here. We've got green, as I said, and yeah, life gaining green is something you see quite a bit of. And if we were to go deeper and just ask it, you know, for cards where you gain life outside of the Soul Warden type ability, then we'd see a ton of cards in here. Soltari Priest. It's interesting commander to play around with, actually. So, en-Kor. I don't know whether I'm going to have much to say about this card beyond what we've said already. We've looked at 2/2s for 2 with evasion on. This is an evasion. We've looked at damage prevention self. Damage redirection, not yet. Better than Shrine Keeper. What does that do? Oh, it's a 2/2 for 2. That's funny. Okay, let's look at damage redirection, because we did look at this one, damage prevention self. So damage redirection, what's listed here? in white. I'm basically trying to avoid doubling up here because there's several cards where the abilities are really similar. So try and look at something different each time. Oh yes, Hasdala the Abbot. Of course, I have this card. And you'll probably see when we were doing redirection to self, you'll probably notice, if we go back here, sorry, damage prevention self, and we were to go through these again, you'll probably notice some cards where you get some interesting combos with these cards. Damage redirection. You can see there were quite a number of those. So this whole damage redirection, we've got, you know, earlier cards in Magic, and then you look through here on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 stronghold cards, 1 in Exodus. And the other interesting one is Pariah. So redirect to enchanted creature, all damage dealt to you. So, let me try and find it for you. So there's Cho Mana, prevent all damage that will be dealt to Cho Mana. Revolutionary. So, I know when I got the 10th edition packs, or the Fat Pack, it had this as a combo, Pariah with Cho Mano, because that's also in 10th edition. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder. I was thinking about that. I wonder if you can do anything interesting in red-white with damage prevention. I'm just thinking of, you know, there's a number of cards, or damage redirection, there's a number of cards where it's some form of either symmetrical or asymmetrical damage, where certain red cards you play them and then they do your opponent damage and they do you damage. I know some of them say, oh, you can't redirect this damage, or it can't be prevented. But with some, I imagine combining up with red-white cards that do that would be pretty cool. White Knight. 2 for 2. What do we want to look at? French Vanilla, Mirrored Knight. Mirrors with Black Knight. Similar to Knight of Glory. Yeah, a lot of, you know, 2/2 knights in Magic. Has a rhyming name, has protection from black, and through that is tagged as evasion. Shrine Keeper again, the white 2 for 2. Yeah, I mentioned Silver Knight, I think. That's the red protection from red one. Now, what was I curious about here? I think that's interesting, Mirrored Knight. We may have looked at this before, I think in fact we have, but it doesn't hurt to revisit just to see where these crop up, because when we've done, I know certainly when we've done set musings, I'll often talk about mirrored cards, and those of you that watched the series a lot will know, you know, Mirrored Knights does crop up on several occasions, has cropped up on several occasions now. Okay, these have hexproof. Interesting. And the other thing, I suppose, is just from a thing. So if we do CMC 2 in white, so I'll do 10 white, and oh yeah, type nigget. Yeah, look at these. Night tribal. 2-drop night tribal. What do you reckon? Would that be a thing? I'm not sure how far you get with it, but yes, my EDH deck is 2-drop night tribal. I don't think there's any legendaries though. Well, I might be wrong. Let's have a look. Let's type legendary. Oh, there we go. There was one. So yeah, the 2-drop night tribal could be a thing. And it's interesting, you know, I'm joking, but there's quite a number of white cards in mono, white cards in Magic that, you know, care about power and toughness. And so you could have sort of abused that, play around with that. I mean, if we drop outside of the, we don't get too obsessed with the colour pie and just do 2-drop knights that are legendary. Opens up a little bit more of a design space for us there. So 2-drop knight deck. And if I do one other thing I'm going to try, because sometimes this gets forgotten about. If I spelt that right. Are there any legendary changelings? Oh, more, yeah, of course, Moriband. So you can, I mean, you can do 5-colour knight, but it is a 7-drop. So yeah, this is the sort of go-to card, I suppose, if you want to play around with a certain type of EDH deck, with certain creature types, which either are underrepresented in Magic, or the other reason for doing this, and we've jumped off path here a bit, is you just want access to all 5 colours. So you're not purely doing it. So what you're doing is it allows you to access all of the colours of all of the cards of a particular type, creature type, across all the colours in Magic. But you know, 7 casting cost. Now, of course, there are other, you know, Wooburg commanders you can use, but you can't then have it so that the legendary creature itself is, you know, in that particular creature type. Although if it's, you know, again, I mean, what's Chromat as a creature? I quite like Chromat because it's like a 5-colour utility. Yeah, so it's classed as an illusion. So yeah, 5-colour illusion. Because that has its own downsides, as many modern illusion cards have a pretty major downside of being blown up fairly easily. Aura of Silence. Moving on. I'm really enjoying today's episode, actually. It's making me feel very chill and joyful at the same time. Cost increases, hate artifact removal. Oh yeah, so yeah, we've got a cost increaser with this destruction stapled to it, which is effectively a disenchant, naturalize. So I'm interested in that because something we probably haven't looked at. The idea of cost increases. So yeah, been around for a while. Sphere of Resistance. Certainly looking forward to doing the artwork episode today, because I just can't remember what cards I have. It always comes across as fairly random because I'm, changed tacks with the way I collected those, in terms of it started out as being cheap EDH cards, or cheap potential EDH cards, and then sort of moved into cycles as well, and the odd artifact. So I'm looking at this going, oh, do I have this? How much is it? Probably not then. $23. Okay, that's a shame. Oh, the leeches. Yes, the leeches. I forgot about those. And you got things like Trinisphere and Suppression Field. Oh, and this as well. Thalia. So yeah, the only downside with this sort of stuff is building a deck round it. It's like a, what do they call it? Fun police deck. But it's an interesting way to dial things back a little bit, I think. There are some lovely cards in Lorwyn. Scarecrow deck there. It's funny, I keep getting drawn back to the leeches for some reason. Invasion. I don't think I have these. And there we go, the Empyrial Armor, which is then part of the name of the deck it comes from. You can see enchanted creature gets +X/+X, where X is equal to the number of cards in your hand. Similar to all that glitters. And the attack is Marrow. Why is it Marrow? Well, cards with power toughness equal to cards in hand, named after the card Marrow, a nickname from Mark Rosewater, the head designer for Magic the Gathering. This card. So if we look at we do this to get our Magic timeline, you can sort of see over time. So there we have Mirage, or Weatherlight, this is from. It's interesting. Multani, which has been reprinted. What? Yeah, I always make that mistake with Multani. For some reason I think it's been reprinted, but it hasn't. Not sure why. Imperial Plate. You can see they were playing around with it in is that all Saviour stuff? It is, isn't it? Yeah. So there was this thing in the set, to do with with power and toughness equal to the number of cards, equal twice the number of cards in hand. Oh, the opponent was yeah. So there's variations there. Cataclysm. Good name for a band. There is a Canadian band. I think they're from Quebec. It's Cataclysm with a K. Check them out. What is the genre of music they call it? Northern Hyperblast, I think is how they're referred to. But they are very good. Trying to remember the name of their ex-drummer, Ollie somebody. He's excellent. Yeah, they've been. Now I've gone on a sidetrack about the band Cataclysm, and it's only because in researching it for an episode, for a future episode from '95, I think it is. I'm going to be talking about a rediscovered album from '95. I stumbled across I think the debut Cataclysm album, so I had to give that a listen. I'm more familiar with what's it, Narcissist period, whatever that album was, like 2018, when I started listening to them a bit more, and I'm pretty sure I may have seen them live sometime in the 2010s actually. It's sort of like a metal thing that ran over multiple days. You didn't know this was going to also be a episode about music, did you? Okay, Sweeper Artifact. So what would be the... So we got Symmetrical. Okay, that's a good thing to search for. Sweeper Land Sacrifice, Sweeper Creature, English, Permanent. Let's try Symmetrical. Symmetrical stuff. Wow. Oh yeah, that had strong alcohol buyback. It's Catastrophe. Why is it not showing? Did I make a mistake? Oh, I know what I did. That's better. There we go. Howling Mine. Blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah. There's Evacuation there. Cataclysm and then Catastrophe. What's that? Cycle of Shrines? Yeah. Okay. Also included this is also cards where it's a symmetrical the bonus or the the amount that you're getting is across all of the board. That's interesting. Alright, someone does squirrel tokens. So yeah, here is captured. Okay, that's actually cool that we've got both. So we've got both, well, we've got all different types of symmetry. So symmetry in damage, bouncing, bonuses, depletion, removal. I'm assuming there's some symmetrical pump here as well. I mean, you could argue, well, I suppose it's not. I'm thinking in terms of slivers, is slivers considered to be like a symmetrical thing? I suppose only if everybody's playing slivers. End hostilities, that would certainly do it. Boom pile. Yeah, I imagine there's a number of symmetrical chaos cards mixed in amongst here, I would say. Modal symmetry. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Furnace Punisher. Okay. Oh, good old Disenchant. Well, we have looked at this on numerous occasions, so I go down too far down the rabbit hole. We've got Abolish, of course, Naturalize in green, Nature's Chant in green-white, and then these seals. So Seal of Cleansing, Seal of Primordium, and then it's also stapled to Devout Witness. In fact, let's just see that. So mono white creature with this on it. I don't know. How well is this going to work? Just trying to keep it on theme. I know I've gone off a bit of track with some things, but if I look at colour white and definitely mono white, 15. There we go. I was curious at the first point we saw creatures in white with this ability to both disenchant and naturalize on them. So not really till Urza's, so after this. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful effect actually. Core Sanctifiers. So Core Sanctifiers are in Plane Chase, so and Zendikar. So in Zendikar, if you've ever drafted Zendikar, super fast format. So yeah, great set to play around with weenies. Tithe, I know we've looked at that before. So yeah, this idea of catching up. Yeah, there's a number of cards in Magic that let you catch up in some way. There you go. Land tax, probably a lot of people are aware of that. There's a couple of ways you can do it. One is to have a boost of something, the other is to cut something. Did we have a cycle? Not quite. I was just wondering if there was a cycle of keep. Oh, yeah, actually. Within that, we got a cycle of keepers. And oaths as well. But isn't that Oath of Druids, which is expensive, so I'm unlikely to have bought that cycle. And I can't guarantee I bought the cycle of keepers, but we will see on Friday what I've got. Well, that is actually interesting because you can see there's quite a number of cycles here for catch-ups. Oh, these pulses. And Scouting Hawk. Okay. Abeyance. Until end of turn, target player cannot play instants, interrupt sorceries or abilities requiring activation cost. This card came up last week, if you remember. It was in, wasn't it? It was in a sideboard, I think, for the deck I was looking at. So, yeah, I mean, with these, I tend to gravitate towards, you know, silence is the one that always pops in to my head. Let's just look at prevent activation cards, because that's another interesting thing to go down. There's a number of cards that will stifle that. So you're probably noticing this deck we are seeing a number of cards which find some way of, yeah, dialing back an opponent. We've seen a couple already here. You've got things like Null Rod as well in Magic, which is in the same set. Of course, Cursed Totem from Mirage. Pithing Needle, that's the one I was trying to think of actually. And things like Grand Abolisher. Yeah, I remember when I saw that card for the first time. That was pretty cool. 2-2 for 2 with this. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activated abilities of artifacts, creatures or enchantments. Wow. Again, something from Mirrodin with really interesting art. Armageddon, destroy all lands, from 5th edition. It's been reprinted a few times. Did that turn up in 10th edition? No, maybe not then. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, not I've always got the impression, rightly or wrongly, that land destruction was dialed back through Magic's history because it's not really that fun a thing for opponents. And we'll just have a look. Sweeper land destruction 26 times in Magic. Catastrophe is interesting. Armageddon. So if we go back, so there's the artwork there. Same as the artwork from the original artwork. and you'll notice there's cards as well that deal with specific types of land as well. You've got things like Boil in red, and ones that deal with just non-basic lands like Ruination, Devastation, Boiling Seas. We mentioned Catastrophe already, and things like Desolation Angel. Obliterate, I think that cropped up in the... Wasn't there an Annihilation from the lore? Oh no, from the Vault lore. I thought there was also like one that contained mass removal spells, but I just can't remember which one it was. I thought it had a mono red mass removal in it. But not then. And of course Jockle Hoops, which does artifacts, creatures and lands. Boom and Bust. Most recent land is Break the Ice because of the overload cost. So if you just cast it, destroy target land that is snow or could produce colour. Interesting. Modern Horizons. Overload for 4 and 2 black. What's this? I don't think I've ever attempted to build a no hand, no land EDH deck. That would be too mean. Cursed Scroll. 3, name a card. Target opponent choose a card at random from your hand. If he or she chooses a name card, Cursed Scroll deals 2 damage to target creature or player. It's a sideboard card in there. So we've now moved on to the sideboard. In fact, maybe I didn't even cover the sideboard. Actually, I didn't. Never mind. So there's the sideboard. Well, we should get on to Spirit Link in a moment, actually. Some of these are in the deck already. Some aren't. So, yeah. Cursed Scroll. Didn't crop up that much. Burn Any oversized mini game and Pinger. It's attached to Magus of the Scroll. I think I've looked at this mini game before. It's a bit of a strange tag. So yeah, Burn Any player. 737 cards. I'm trying to think what I want to look at. I'll tell you what. Cursed Stuff. Cursed Land, Cursed Minotaur, Cursed Monstrosity, we've got Cursed Rack. Cursed Scroll, Cursed Totem. Yep. Players cannot play any creature with abilities requiring an activation cost. And then Spirit Link. So again, it's life gain theme, so for each 1 damage enchanted creature deals, gain 1 life. So we've got a bit of that going on. Old lifelink. There's lifelink. and Vampiric Link, which is colour shifted. So the cards with old lifelink, so before it was keyworded, it was a triggered ability. And if we look at it here, you can see, there we go. So 29 cards that have old lifelink on it. And that's something I mentioned earlier about, you know, interesting thing to play around in with fast decks. In an instance where you might be draining your own life and, you know, possible ways of getting it back. But if you were to look at just a regular lifelink, so 466 cards, big difference. If you're just curious about white there, so we'll do that. You can see it's also going to be on enchantments, which is what we were looking at. And if I just go back to Spirit Link and ask it to just look at auras that do it. So we've got 10 auras that have new lifelink, and if we do old lifelink but only do auras, and what I'll do on the other one, actually I just realised I'm going to switch it so it's actually all colours. Just, it's an interesting thing to see with this. There we go. So these are old lifelink auras in all colours. I suppose we better do the correct thing here, eh? There we go. Because Armadillo Cloak. And then here, this is in order, isn't it? Yeah. Daybreak Coronet, Steel of the Godhead. There's a lifelink. Most recent one, Kindly Ancestor. But it's because of this, so yeah, not. Let me try and find. Okay, here I think one that isn't double-sided. You can see quite a few interesting variants as well. And like doubling it out with pump. Falls like Steel of the Godhead. On a blue-white creature. Yeah, these are interesting to play around, these auras from this block, you know, on the appropriate sort of 2-colour creature as well. That can be, I think there's a white-black one you can abuse in a white-black Weenie deck, which is quite fun to mess around with. The cycle of auras. Okay, there we have it. A little mess up there with forgetting to walk through the sideboard, but of course we did go through these cards as well. But just there at the end so you can see what was in the sideboard. So 3 Cursed Scrolls, 3 Spirit Links, 3 Abeyances, 1 Disenchant, 3 Auras of Silence, and 2 Armageddons. And if you remember, I mentioned the Disenchant was actually mainboarded. He's just sort of increased it. And as was the Aura of Silence as well. There. So interesting really here apart from where they're increasing the amount of stuff. I'm just looking to see what, looking to see. So this is sort of increasing the life gain where they're going up probably against a sort of deck that's going to deplete life quite heavily. But it's interesting because a lot of the main deck has specific hate towards certain colours in Magic anyway, because often in a sideboard you will see cards that, so if you're going up, say, against a red deck or a black deck or anything like that, specific solutions, but because a lot of that is main decked already, you can see we've got land destruction, life gain, dialing that up, and then this, which would be it's so name a card, target opponent, choose a card random from your hand. If she or he, so interesting. There's no, what I was looking for here is there's nothing that really goes after like combo pieces in an opponent, I don't think. I mean, there's cards here like Aura of Silence, which, we already have one copy in the main deck, which just make your opponent more miserable, I suppose, with respect to artifacts and enchantments. Yeah, interesting. I mean, it is, fascinating thing to look at is and I did say this at the start to some degree, is in the colours, to look at the evolution of the Weenie deck in all the different colours over time. It's a massive area to look at, get interested in. It's interesting to look at the curves and how in different colours in different periods in Magic, was it your 1-drops, was it your 2-drops, that sort of thing, and where was most of the power, or while you're trying to get stuff out, maybe if you've got a lot of 2-drops and you don't have a smooth curve where you've got a certain number of 1-drops into 2 into 3, what cards are you going to have whilst you get the 2-drops out? So that was fun today. Well, it's always fun to do these, but particularly fun to look through. I mean, sport for choice really. And I'm sure next week we're going to see some interesting stuff. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.